than it is for you to buy a new vehicle right now. Light just went off. All right, what just happened? All right, so Sean says that he's in a predicament. He's got some things going on with his truck, some paint that's faded, and is asking if he should just fix his truck or find another. So what I am saying to everyone right now is don't go buy something. If you have something that doesn't have just this major fix that you really, it's not economical to fix it, then fix your car and just drive it until the prices on these used vehicles, on the new vehicles, come down, because you're going to end up saving yourself so much more money by just putting a little bit of money into the vehicle that you currently have to fix it than you are to pay. I mean, in the case of a truck, you're paying a lot of times $15,000 more than what these trucks are worth. So if you can fix your vehicle for, I mean, $2,500, $3,000, then just let's go ahead and get it fixed, and then just drive the poopy out of it, and just stay in it until these prices correct, and then you can get into something that's not ridiculously overpriced. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these mechanic shops right now are just overwhelmed, because people are choosing that route, which I think is the smartest way to go, is just keep your car running as long as you can right now. Let's wait out the market, and we can buy again when prices get back to something that looks halfway reasonable. All right, Justin Thompson says, I'm a dealer in Charlotte as well, and this is the worst tax season I've seen. Hearing that from a lot of dealers. He said he opened his lot in 2010, and he is also a cash-only dealer, and he's never floor planned any of his cars. Great job, Justin. That is going to help you through these tough times. A lot of these guys swear by these floor plans. I know a lot of my viewers talk about how they love using floor plans and other people's money. Just be careful. I know it can help you grow a lot faster, but it can be dangerous. So just please be careful if you're using one. If you're getting into the car business, I don't recommend a floor plan. It's a double-edged sword. Yes, it can make you grow fast, but it can also make you go out of business very fastly. Very fast, yes. I've also been hearing a lot of these dealers are going to close. Yeah, so I've heard that a lot too, and I've actually got a buddy that is closing up. He's got a car dealership in another state, and he actually works a full-time job around where I live. So he doesn't need the car lot, and he doesn't. He's not closing it out of necessity. He's closing it because it's just not easy anymore. So he'll probably get into it again in the future, but you're seeing a lot of people, especially older guys, closing their dealerships just because the money's not easy anymore. It's become a big time hassle to go to. You have to go to more auctions right now to be able to keep up inventory. At least good inventory that you can find for a reasonable price. You have to dig, search, all these different auctions to hopefully find a deal to be able to get cars, and it's just not easy anymore. Just as an example, before the pandemic, 2019, 2018, we were selling 70, 80, even towards 2019, almost 100 cars a month. And I was able to service that amount of sales just with 3 auctions. And now we're doing probably 60 to 70 a month, and we've got to hit 4, 5, 6 auctions a week, even if we want to get close to that number. So it's just a big difference in the quantity and quality of inventory that's coming to a lot of these auctions, and it's hard. So we're seeing a lot of dealers that just don't want to deal with it anymore. They don't need the car lots, but they're just closing up just because it's hard. And unfortunately, I think what we're going to see in the near future is a lot of dealers close up shop because they actually have to. All right, Dusty Bottoms asks, how do you feel when you hear "Let's go, Brandon"? All right, so a lot of you have been asking what kind of scanner I use when I go to these auctions, and really I'll tell you all the scanners that we use. So we have 4 different ones that we use across either going to the auctions or ones that my guys use when they're checking out cars or doing drive cycles to get them ready for inspection. And I'll just start with the first one, and that's the one that I use all the time. Actually, you know what? All right. So it's this one, and it's a, can you see it? It's a Bosch scanner. I don't know the model number, whatever. I'll put a link in the description below. But it's just the one that I use. I'm comfortable with it. It's actually the same, basically the same model as that one up there. I don't know if Bosch bought them out, if they just license the actual design or whatever to them, but that's the older version of the newer one that I have. The reason I like it is because I'm used to it. It's quick enough. It's got this code connect feature that when ever the code pops up that you can see, you can actually hit that button, and it tells you what common fixes are for it. But the biggest thing for it for me is that it reads transmissions. I don't really care about all the live data and stuff when I'm going to these auctions. I don't ever take the time to read that stuff anyway. So I need to read the OBD2, I need it to read the engine module, and I need it to read the transmission module. That's the biggest thing for me, because a lot of times, especially like in Fords, they'll throw transmission code saying like a solenoid is out of whack or something like that, and that's just an easy way for me to know that transmission's bad. They'll throw torque converter codes, and a basic scanner might not actually read that because it's not picking up on some of the transmission codes that the system might be throwing. So step down from that, Alex actually uses a very similar scanner to mine. It reads all the same stuff. It's also by Bosch, but it's just the step down. It doesn't have the code connect. And really, I could use that one too. The only reason I have the one that I have is because it's just basically the same model of the one that I used for years and years and years, and I'm just used to it. So I'll put the link to his in the description below too. It's basically the same model, just a little bit cheaper. Mine reads a little bit more as far as live data and stuff like that, but if you're just reading codes, they're basically the same thing, so the cheaper one might be the better route to go. So now at the shop, we have two different scanners that we use. We have a few guys that do drive cycles for us. They'll even check codes and do like minor repairs, especially if Alex is not there. One is this little black scanner, and it's actually what what a lot of my team uses when they're just trying to read a code, if they're just trying to clear a code to be able to do another drive cycle. If Alex fixes something and he needs them to drive it to make sure everything's reset, the computer and everything, to get it ready for inspection, then they'll use this. And then we have an even more basic one than that. Sorry, I'll put the link in the description below for that one. For all four of them, I'll put it in there. But we even have a more basic one than that. It's the little red one. It's got literally 2 buttons. Jose, if you've watched the channel for a long time, you've heard me talk about Jose. He is our elder statesman of the team. He love him. He's just like family to us, but he is an older guy, and Jose and electronics do not get along well. So this scanner is actually perfect for him. It's easy to use. It's not going to read anything other than what the code is. It'll erase the code, and it'll tell how many monitors have not set yet. We use that for inspection. He can literally hit one button on it, and it will tell him whether or not this car will pass inspection for us. So that's what we use for Jose. If you're looking for the most basic of the basic of the basic, then check that one. I'll even put Jose scanner and then put the link under that one in the description. So those are the 4 scanners we use, just going from the most expensive and one that will do the most down to Jose scanner. So for those of you who had questions about it, there's the links. Again, I'm not promoted by these companies whatsoever, but we will put the links in the description below for you. All right, Brian Claus, whichever one, asked, do you have any relationships with local dealers, or is that a thing of the past now? And what he is actually asking is about wholesalers, dealers like me, having relationships with actual franchise dealers, so when they bring in trade-ins, then they can just call a small dealer like me and try to just wholesale it off their lot instead of taking that vehicle to auction. And this is something that used to happen all the time. My grandfather was a car dealer well before me. I think he started back in the early 70s. And this used to be really commonplace in the industry. He told me that he would have a friend at like a Chevy dealership, and whenever they would get in a trade-in that his friend knew that my grandfather would like, my grandfather bought a lot of Chevy trucks, that he would call my grandfather and say, hey, come look at this truck. We need this for it. And my grandpa would go look at it and buy it basically straight from the franchise dealer. That doesn't happen anymore. And the reason is because a lot of these guys that work for these franchise dealers are shady, were shady. A lot of used car dealers are shady, were shady. So what was happening is that a lot of money was getting exchanged that the franchise dealers did not know about. A lot of palms were getting greased so that these used car dealers, these wholesalers, whoever was coming in and buying these cars, were actually giving money to whoever was working doing the deals for the franchise dealer under the table, and then they were getting better deals, and then the franchise dealer was actually losing money, not losing money overall, but was not getting as much money as they could have, because just the wholesaler and the franchise worker were cutting a deal at the bare minimum of what the franchise needed. And it was just a big shady operation. So a lot of these franchise dealers had just said, you know what? No, we're not doing this anymore. Anytime we get a trade in, the second we get it, it's going straight to the auction. No one's going to be able to buy this vehicle other than going through the auction. Now they're paying auction fees to do this, but it's actually better, I think, for the franchise dealer because there's no bribery going on. There's no money being exchanged that the franchise dealer doesn't know about. So they're going to actually get the maximum amount of dollars for this vehicle going through the auction because no one's getting favoritism as far as going through the wholesale side of just going direct to a used car dealer. So dealers are shady. People who work at franchise dealers are shady. That's why it doesn't happen anymore. All right, Ed asks, in the case you mentioned with a bad transmission, what can you do to get out from under it? And also, just another question, very similar, right in the same thread. Belly Laughter asks, could you sell it to a car buff who wants to do a transmission themselves and still break even, or would the price have to be too low for that kind of sell? So the problem with being a used car dealer with where I am a used car dealer in North Carolina. For me to actually sell a vehicle to someone who doesn't have a dealer's license, I have to get that car inspected before I can sell it to them. So if I have a vehicle that has a bad transmission and it's just not worth it for us to fix it, that car's not going to pass inspection in North Carolina where I'm at. So I cannot sell it to an individual. I can't sell it to this shade tree mechanic so they can fix it on the cheap and then get a good deal. I can get some money out of it, more than what I would get from taking it to an auction. I can't do that because they have to have a dealer's license for me to be able to sell it to them without getting it inspected. So in these cases, what we have to do is literally just dump it to the auction. I would love to just advertise it online and say, hey, this needs a transmission. Come get it, $1,500, and you can have it. And we would sell a lot of cars to mechanics like that. But because we're in a place where I have to get cars inspected, I just simply can't do it. So instead of getting $1,500, $2,000 for a car and somebody getting a deal that they can do the work on, we send it to auction and we might only get $800 for it. So sucks for us, sucks for someone who would have wanted to buy that car and put a transmission in it, but really the laws just tie our hands, and it's at the end of the day we just have to send it to auction and dump it and take our lumps. All right, Candace asks, do auctions tell you if they are a lemon title? So talking about if the cars are a lemon when they go through the auction. So an auction is supposed to announce any kind of brands that are on the title of a vehicle when they're actually running through the lane. And a lot of times, a lot of these auctions have run lists that they'll put out before the auction runs, and they'll have announcements on each individual car. So in a lot of cases, stuff like this is missed. And if I find it, or if another dealer buys a vehicle and they find something's like salvage and the auction doesn't announce it, then we actually have the right to bring the car back to the auction and say, you know what, we don't want it. But the auction is responsible to let us know when the car is going through the lane what is wrong with it. So they'll announce lemon, they'll announce salvage, they'll announce theft, flood. But two, it's always good for us to run a Carfax before we actually want to bid on the car. We have a lot of dealers have the Carfax app, and we can just go up to it and scan the VIN when it's going through the lane, or before when we check the cars when they're out on the lot. And we can find out what brands are following the car or attached to the title of the car before the car even goes through. All right, Everyday Mechanic says you should explain arbitration on vehicles at the auction and how it works. Yeah, so every auction that I go to, and every auction that's really across the country, is going to have its own arbitration policy. And what arbitration is after you buy a vehicle, you can actually check if there's something that's not portrayed the way that it's supposed to run mechanically, or if you have some kind of paperwork issue or whatever, you can then arbitrate a car after you bought it and then be able to return that car to the auction and get your full money back for it. So a lot of cases where arbitration is actually used is when a motor or a transmission might be bad in a car and you don't know it when you actually buy it. And after the fact, you drive the car and it's slipping like crazy, or it won't go into third gear, or motor's knocking, or it's about to blow up, whatever. And that car was sold with a ride and drive. It was sold on a green light, meaning it was guaranteed to have a good motor, a good transmission. Then after the fact, find out it's not, then you can actually go to the auction and say, hey, this is wrong with this vehicle, and you can return it, and the auction will give you your money back, and the seller will have to keep that car. Now, a lot of auctions have limits on these arbitration policies. So I know that the auction that I go to every week that you see, they let me film there. So the one that you see on my channel almost every week, they have a policy, and I believe it's right at $3,000. So if the car brings under $3,000, it is as is, no matter what. And if the car has over 175,000 miles, it doesn't matter what the car brings, is as is. So even if the car brings $10,000 and it's got 180,000 miles, it doesn't matter. It's still an as-is car at that auction. Now, there's some cases, especially at a small auction like that, where a seller can say, you know what, it doesn't matter. I know this car is perfect. We're going to sell with a ride and drive no matter what the arbitration policy is. We're going to sell with a ride and drive. If you don't want it, you don't have to own it. I'll own it. So a lot of sellers will do that just to say, hey, this is a good car. I know it's a good car. And it's actually good for a seller to do that when they know it's a good car, because it'll bring more money. Now let's talk about arbitration as in the form of title work. So if a car runs through the auction and it is there's no announcements on it, so that means it's supposed to be a clean title. Then after the fact, we find out, we run a Carfax on it after we buy it, and it's got a salvage title, because a lot of times when we buy the cars, the titles aren't there, so we have to run our Carfax after we buy the car if it's a car we're not expecting to buy when it goes through the auction. I do that sometimes. But we run the Carfax and it's a salvage title, then at that point I can go to the auction and say, hey, there was no announcements on this car. It turns out it's a salvage title, and the auction will then take the car back. Seller will have to take the car back. Same as the motor transmission. They have to actually give me my money back if I buy that car. The last thing that I can say about the arbitration policy is, talking about titles earlier, if the seller does not provide the title within a certain amount of days, a lot of auctions are 30 days. I know the auction that I show you every week, it's 45 days, and a lot of auctions are going to that longer time period just to give their sellers more time to get titles. I hate it as a buyer. I understand it from the auction standpoint. I'm not going to argue with them about it, but 45 days is a lot to have to wait on a title for a car. But in any case, if the seller does not provide the title within whatever the time period the auction allows, then at that point, the buyer, me, I have the opportunity or the ability to return that car and get my full money back for it. So if it turns out it's 46 days and it's a car that I don't want to keep, and the auction's policy is 45 days, then on that 46th day, I can actually return that car if that seller has not provided me with the title yet. So that's the last form of arbitration that we have to deal with. I'm sure there's other kinds of arbitrations out there, but as far as the ones that I deal with as a small used car dealer, I'm sure a lot of these bigger dealers that buy newer cars, if these new franchise dealers come in and actually are buying new cars from other franchise dealers, there's probably other kinds of arbitrations, but those are the three types that I deal with on a daily basis. All right, Candy asks, how can a seller say no to a bid price at an auction? Shouldn't the lowest amount the seller would take be the starting bid? I wish it worked like that, but sadly it does not. So what will happen is a seller will bring a car to the auction and tell them what their absolute floor is, what they'll take for it, and usually it's not their real floor. Nothing about the used car industry is transparent. Even on the dealer-to-dealer side, it's even more, I won't say shady, but it's even more really hidden behind the scenes of what goes on, because a lot of these sellers know that there can be a back and forth afterwards, and what they'll actually take, they're not going to really present that to the auction. Just because they're like, well, what if I can just get more, and we want to say we can put on a phone call, put on an if, and then we can do some negotiation afterward to try to squeeze out every little penny that we can. So what will usually happen, they'll send a car to the auction, they'll say, all right, my floor is $10,000, and the auctioneer will try to start it at like a right around that amount, probably 10,500, 10,000. They'll try to start it around the floor, but it never goes that way, because bidders know to whatever the auctioneer is trying to start it out at, they're going to be able to start it way lower. So that car that the auctioneer is trying to start out at the floor, which is like around $10,000, that car will probably start out around $7,500, and it will just it'll go up, and a lot of times it won't bring even what the floor wants, especially when times are slower. The reserves will not be met, and there are a lot of if bids, a lot of no sales. So that car probably brings somewhere around $9,000, $9,500. They'll put it on a phone call, and after the auction, they'll call the seller, say, hey, you wanted $10,000 for this car. It only brought $9,000. What we take for it? And a lot of times the seller will just be like, you know what, I'll take $9,500 for it, see if you can get it done. And a lot of times they'll meet in the middle somewhere. It'll get done for $9,200, $9,300, but it would be so much less of a hassle, so much less waiting for the buyers. And we would know what we actually bought in lane when we buy it if this wasn't really the norm. And I hate it. It's frustrating. I hate an if bid. I hate being put on a call. Sometimes I'll even say, you know what? No, I don't want to call. Just no sell it. I don't need this car. I'll bid on it again next week. But if you want to buy cars, I mean, you gotta play the game, and that's the game. You gotta negotiate afterwards, and it sucks, and I hate it, but that's just the way it is. Way cheaper to do that than it is for you to buy a new vehicle right now. Light just went off. All right, what just happened? All right, well, we're in the dark. All right, so just a little behind the scenes info here. So power went out when I was filming this yesterday, and it never came back on. No, it's not like we didn't pay our light bill or anything like that. We our whole neighborhood, all of the power went out, and was out for like over 12 hours. So what we ended up doing, instead of staying in a very hot house, because it's hot here in North Carolina today for whatever reason, in April, it's very hot. We actually went and stayed in a hotel, and it's a good experience. Took my wife, my son, and our little dog, and they had an indoor pool. So me and my son had a great time swimming last night. All right, wanted to read a poem for you guys. I move in, now move out. Hands up, now hands down. Back up, back up. Tell me what you're gonna do now? Breathe in. Now breathe out. Hands up. Now hands down. Back up. Back up. Tell me what you're going to do now. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. What? Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Come on. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Yeah. Keep rolling, 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 rolling.